Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today to talk about hybrid phishing attacks and how hackers are getting you to call them. I'm Britta Nelson, Marketing Manager for HacWare, and I'm joined today by Boaz Avigad, Senior Director of Product Marketing with Perimeter 81, and Tiffany Ricks, CEO and Founder of HacWare. And before we get started with their introductions, I do want to go through just a little bit of housekeeping. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, you can comment within the event to ask questions that come up for you and also chat with your fellow attendees. So let's kick that off by just letting us know where you're joining us from today. And we're also doing a $25 gift card for the most engaged people in the chat. So make sure and ask your questions. And if you don't get your question answered during the event, we are going to have a couple of minutes for Q&A at the end. So there'll still be an opportunity for that. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Tiffany, to introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Britta. I'm Tiffany Ricks. I'm the founder and CEO of HacWare. HacWare is a cybersecurity education platform. We make it easy for MSPs to do AI-driven phishing simulations and security awareness training. Prior to HacWare, I worked as a software engineer, security engineer, and I've also worked as a certified ethical hacker. And I spend a lot of my time, this is my jam. Like, I love spending time understanding what's going on in the threat landscape and leading this wonderful company here. But I want to turn it over. I'm super excited to be here with Perimeter 81 and Boaz. Boaz, introduce yourself.
All right. Thanks, Tiffany. So yeah, I manage the product marketing team for Perimeter 81. Perimeter 81 is a networking and network security SaaS solution. So we deliver pretty much all the security needs that organizations have for protecting their networks from the cloud. I've been in the networking and security industry for the better part of the last 20 years, doing a whole bunch of roles in security, if it's SSE, SASE, firewalls, secure web gateways, DDoS solutions, web application firewalls. The list goes on. I love the space. I love being here, and especially love kind of this angle of things, Tiffany, that we're going to talk about, which is kind of the human side of things and how to trick people, not machines, into trying to target organizations. So that's always topic I love talking about.
Fantastic. Well, let's get it started. So, and I see we have people chiming in from Washington. I believe we have Mississippi. And so let's get this started. In our mission here at HacWare, we're super focused on educating our partners. And by the time you leave here today, we're going to help you to understand what are hybrid phishing attacks. We're going to help you to understand the attacker journey and the risk, the misconceptions, as well as what is key. How do we prepare your end users to combat these attacks? And so right off the bat, hey, Cass, good to see you. Dallas in the house. So right off the bat, let's explain what is hybrid phishing. Hybrid phishing is basically, when you think about it, the cyber criminals have learned that they can try to lure users to come to them. So it's not the traditional type of phishing where they're trying to lure the users to click on a link or an attachment. They're making these users or luring these users to do a secondary action. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we gave an example just to help you get your mind ready that it typically could start, and we're going to talk about the misconceptions, but it typically could start with a phishing email and then asking the end user to make a phone call. And then that leads into, them getting inside the perimeter. And I'm happy that I have my partner here, Boaz from Perimeter 81. Can you share a little bit more to help? We want to help frame the conversation about hybrid phishing. We're going to share more about why it is, challenging. But can you talk a little bit, Boaz, about when it gets into the perimeter? What does that look like? When it gets into their system, what does it look like?
Sure. So hybrid phishing really is about obtaining credentials and getting a foothold within an organization. Right? If we're used to the regular phishing attacks where you're just in an email with a link and you click on it and it impersonates a bank or another organization when you enter your credentials. This is kind of more tricky. It does go across channel, as you said, and a successful phishing attack, or specifically hybrid phishing attack in this case, will end in a perpetrator getting a foothold in the organization. Typically, that would be on an employee's endpoint device. And from there, they will try to make their way and kind of propagate across the network to reach the really important, the crown jewels, if you will, of the organization, where that can lead to ransomware and breaches and those really devastating attacks that can take a company down.
Yeah, so you're definitely right. And the key reason why we want to talk a little bit more about it is that it's on the rise. We want to make sure that we're empowering everyone to understand this new trend. And really, it started back in 2020. Bleeping Computer gave a stat that it grew from 2021, these hybrid phishing attacks, by over 600%. But we've seen it grow year over year. And one of the things that I saw based on the research that I've seen is in these attacks, sometimes they're using lures in 2020 where it was an invoice. So they would target service providers, and we work with managed service providers around the world. They would target help desk organizations. They would send a invoice for like a McAfee a product, and it would be a large number where that would cause you to move urgent, and you want to figure out, did I make this purchase or did I not? And that was one of the key things that was happening in 2020. But one of the things that we've seen grow with this same type of attack is that cyber criminals are now sending the same invoice, but they also have a phone number in the invoice telling you to call them and discuss if this is incorrect, which it is, because there wasn't this charge that was for $2,000, $3,000. They want you to call. But the second part of this hybrid attack that we're seeing happening in 2022 and 2023 is now they are calling from that number to you. So they're calling you not one time, but two times, multiple times, to add validity to this email that came in for this invoice, the number you see there, then you get a phone call multiple times. And so that's how they're able to pull these attacks off. And their tool of choice is the old fashioned phone. Like, they're using that to pull off these hybrid phishing attacks. And so, Boaz, what's your thoughts on this stat? What do you think about it?
I think it's amazing to see, and I think again, it's that the whole concept of social engineering that cyber criminals are using and trying to trick us. And I kind of said before, right, the old school phishing attacks were just web. I think a lot of people are aware of those, and that if you get an email and suddenly you're being asked questions, enter your password, and people kind of look out for that. But kind of a criminal organization that is actually able to obtain your email and your phone number, and then you get a certain email and a phone call follows, you as a user get the impression that this has to be legit. I mean, somebody can send me an email, that's easy to do, but how do they also know what my phone number is? That's got to be legit, right? That cannot be somebody went to that extent. But that's really the way it happens. And you're being attacked from two kind of different directions. It makes it look more credible, and it's easier, to fall for that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, you bring up some cool points about why they are being so successful. Because you're right. It is disarming. This idea of, how did they get my phone number? You wouldn't think that your information, your email is there because you're signing up on different websites with your email, and that site could get compromised. Well, now they have your email information, but you don't think that they also have your phone number, and that they're going to go through these links of trying to make their scams feel real. So you're 100% on par on why these attacks are continuously happening. Any other thoughts about the hybrid attacks and why they are working, Boaz?
The credibility point really is, I think, a big part of it.
Mhm.
And essentially they're creating this new flow of not just using, not just an email. It's something kind of new, and I think it kind of surprises you, it catches you off guard. And I think that's cybersecurity in general. It's that cat and mouse game. It's the attacks becoming more complicated, and that's true for phishing, the social engineering type of attack, and also intrusion prevention and scanning and trying to infiltrate systems. That's always evolving, and I think they're becoming more successful because they're finding that there's a lot of psychology behind social engineering. It's
Mhm.
predicting or getting a feel for how people will behave. It's really fascinating to think about. It's an exercise in human psychology. Unfortunately, it's being used for negative use here, but essentially they are getting that insight into the psyche of people and how they will react to that flow of events that create the attack. And they're being more successful. The attacks are becoming more elaborate.
Yeah, and I agree with that point with you about them using the psychology, but also learning that our solutions are becoming a little bit harder for them to pull off their attacks. So
Right.
evolving with cybersecurity and social engineering, which is why I think it makes sense for them to move towards this hybrid attack, utilizing the phone and trying to use social engineering tactics to make their phishing, or we're going to talk about smishing, but make their attacks look real and then get the user to call them, because
Yeah.
they don't have to worry about an email gateway. They don't have to worry
Right.
about all of our great cybersecurity solutions. They're trying to take it back to the old school way. And
Right.
one of the things that I remember when working with the Department of Defense, the key thing that they talked about back then was social engineering in like in person, like how when you're out and you're out at a bar or you're out at a restaurant and someone comes up to you, and you may have your badge on at work, but you may have your badge from work, but someone comes up to you and they may see your badge and they may call you by your name, and they're just continuously social engineering you in person. I feel like that is the hybrid attacks are learning from the old tried and
Sure.
true ways and bringing it and trying to bring it into the future.
Sure. I think it's very true. The technology side of cybersecurity, those protections are evolving. We see machine learning and AI,
Mhm.
and they're becoming more sophisticated and able to deal with attacks. Humans are not, we're not evolving as fast. We don't have, we can't install systems in our head that will change our behavior. We are probably an easier target than, computer systems. I think
Oh,
humans
absolutely,
probably
because
are
we
that
trust.
the weakest link. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one more thing before we move on, I really want to touch on, so there's different ways to, we always want to give an attack a name, and there's different names for, the different types of hybrid attacks. There's attacks that are called callback phishing attacks, and that's what we kind of talked about before, where they're asking someone to call them back. There's also this attack where it's multi-factor and it's called the telephone oriented attack delivery. And basically, that could be that they're using a smishing attack, which is what we're going to talk about later, where they're sending you a text message, and the text message is
Right.
still following what they're asking in the email of, this is an invoice, or this is something urgent that's going on, and you may not respond, but then they follow up with a call. And so those are some different types of hybrid phishing attacks. What I want to show next
Sure.
is an example of one, and we've written an article that Britta's going to share a little bit later on an attack that we found that was pretty clever, and it really is a true example of hybrid phishing and how it is targeting our people. And I'm wearing this shirt here that says, "May your workforce protect you," because in this case, you really need to make sure that your people are aware of these types of attacks, because they can protect you. And I'll share a little bit more about why this is geared towards people and trying to bypass tech. So this email actually is from PayPal. It's not a phishing attack where the PayPal domain was spoofed. I'm going to show you that in a second. But they are using, cyber criminals are using actual systems like PayPal. We also have found YouTube, where they are using these systems where in the body, where you can send something to someone and then you can modify the body of the message. And the from email is from the actual source. And basically, that's what we're showing you here in this invoice here, where they are asking the user, they're sending it to the user. It's from an actual PayPal domain, but they're asking you to call a number and to cancel this or to receive a refund. That's that lure, the urgency. You see this amount, and so, but it's a crypto. There's some hints that it could be a phishing scam. Is that it says crypto, and we're breaking it down how here they can put in a generic title. They could have made it more real by putting in a person's name. You can go to PayPal. We've notified them about this vulnerability, but you can put in who you want it to go to. They have the normal lures that are in a phishing scam where there's a sense of urgency. They have that hybrid element where they want you to call them, luring you to them. And then again, just different things to help us understand it's phishing. Text errors. I'm showing this now, but due to AI and a lot of different just technologies, we're seeing phishing scams where text errors is not gonna be a thing anymore.
Right.
So I try to make sure we look at many of the other indicators. And then one more thing, and then I want to get your thoughts on this, Boaz. But the other thing I want you to see, and this is for all of our MSPs that are in the audience, all of our solution providers, our admins, our individuals that are managing our networks. The key thing here is that it bypassed all of the authentication requirements for this email. It's passing SPF, DKIM, DMARC. So it's not a spoof domain. I think the only key way that if we are aware of this scam is adding in, keywords for crypto or something like that to try to prevent it from getting to the end user. But this most likely would end up in a user's inbox. And so may they protect you? Will they protect you? And not call that number and move further in the attacker journey. What's your thoughts on this, Boaz?
Right. So yeah, the particular one kind of showed us with a spelling mistake and all that. That's obviously a bit sloppy, and a lot of those are much better crafted. Once you're able to generate that perfect specimen of an email that passes all the defenses you mentioned and is able to make it through and seems super super legit, it really becomes hard to get that to the attention of whoever's reading this that this might be fraud. And I think this is where education comes in. And I think it's best practice, and it's true for people's personal accounts, but also for corporate users, is that when you get such an email from a known company to take action, is not to call the numbers or click on the links that are within that email, but right, if PayPal is trying to access you, if you go and log into PayPal the legit with the way that directly, not through this link, you will be able to see if that appears there or not. Obviously, if it appears there, then it's legit. So it's always best not to return or connect to these services through the elements of phone numbers or the links in the email, but go directly and see what you can find. So education is a big part of this. I think in this case, right, it had the phone number, it also had the link. Obviously, protecting phone numbers, that would be impossible. There are no technology tools that have lists of malicious phone numbers. Regarding the link, that would be easier, right? Clicking, if that is a link that directs to a malicious site, there's a good chance that appears in a malicious site database, and then that could be blocked there. I think it's always a combination, especially with these social engineering attacks. It's always a combination of education and user awareness. together with technology. They need to go hand in hand.
No, I'm with you. I think we have to have both. We have to have, we have to we have to have our team, who I always say we have to make sure that our team knows how to fight, but we also have to make sure that we have a shield, surveillance. Like
Right.
we really got to have it all to
Right.
fight cybercrime.
Sure. Absolutely.
And the question for the audience, we love, as Britta mentioned earlier, where we want you to be engaged. This is a conversation. And so my question to the audience is, what do you think is the most common type of hybrid attack? Think about, I'm sure I'm not alone. I'll talk a little bit about my dad and his journey with the hybrid attack, but in the chat, tell me, what do you think is the most common type? And what I mean by that is, like, maybe there's a brand or the type of lure or what they're saying to try to get you to click. Share a little bit about, what do you think is the most common? We have our ideas. So what I'm going to share is the top common ones that we found in our research. But I want to hear a little bit more about your stories and what you've seen. The top 5 that we found are, account management and multi-factor compromise. The ones where it's about your account is going to be expired, or it's really just trying to exploit. I see the comments coming in. Fantastic. The internal security team impersonation. That's a good one. Banking, security, social security and taxes, Medicare and healthcare. Those are some of the common attacks. I see from Kate, she says billing, very popular. That is 100% correct. We also see from Jack, McAfee, PayPal. That was definitely one of the top. I can't remember the year, but year over year is definitely one of the top 5 most impersonated brands. PayPal, Invoice. Boaz, which ones have you seen?
Oh, working with customers, I've seen all of this
Yeah.
and more, but definitely, I think MFA is kind of interesting if we kind of talk about that for a moment, right? Especially if you're trying to penetrate an organization, there are they will have some sort of multi-factor authentication. Usually, it's two-factor, right? You would sign in with user and password, and then you would also get a request on your mobile phone to identify yourself. Face ID under a code. And these are critical because a lot of organizations are relying on this two-factor authentication. And if using these techniques, right, and smishing that we talk about, getting that info through a text message, right, if they can target you and actually get you to enter that code because you think you're authenticating with two-factor authentication, you're renting that code to authenticate, you are now providing the perpetrator that already has your, other credentials. They've already compromised your user and password. That's how the attack started. Now, by a kind of a hybrid phishing attack, they also are able to get your code, your secret code that used to sign in, and they've got everything now. They have all the credentials they need. They can now enter the organization at their will, and wreak havoc. And I think that's a really critical attack. And I think especially for MSPs who themselves manage a lot of organizations, that can lead to them, that can lead to a supply chain attack, which we've seen being one of the largest growing or quickest growing types of attack, where if you're able to penetrate MSP and breach an MSP, you essentially can from there get access to all of the customers that MSP is serving, and the damage is exponentially more critical, right? Versus other attacks where you're targeting a specific person, and a very local breach. So that's definitely something that needs more attention.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that MFA a type of attack, I almost I like what you said. but I have seen where they've tried to do a couple things where they're impersonating MFA. So they could be impersonating their a IT team or a third
Right.
party IT team, and they're
Right.
acting as if they're part of this managed service company. Um, and they're saying we sent you a code, and it also happens at call centers as well, where they're impersonating a call center, where they'll say, I'm giving you a call, you should have a text message code, can you read me that code? And then they want them to kind of go through and verify the information that they actually need to take and go to the actual website and
Exactly.
log in and pull off their attack. But I've seen it
Right.
where they're utilizing these password resets that may send a code and try to use that as a part of their verification process to get information.
Right. Right. Some of these techniques are genius. I mean, you have to admit, you don't want to be on the receiving end, but thinking about the planning and the execution of these, some of them are, you have to take your hat off, but
Absolutely.
stay safe.
Absolutely. That's why I'm a student of this space. I really love looking at and trying to
Yeah.
understand after an attack has happened, what are there some learnings? And I think that's where we may miss the opportunity
Yeah.
to get better. Is sometimes an organization is just happy that it's over, but they won't go back and do an autopsy on
Sure.
how the breach happened and what could we have done to prevent it from happening, and how can we close those doors. That's the key thing. Close the
Absolutely.
doors so another attack or a double attack doesn't happen. And it
Absolutely.
all goes back to going back and doing that autopsy of an attack, and then training your end users about what to look for, because they do come back or they will sell to, on the dark web, this information, these insights for another cyber criminal
Right.
to use that and potentially have a successful attack as well.
Sure. And you don't have any specifically for ransomware attacks, which are probably the most devastating. Actually, in cases where the victim company pays that ransom, their chance of being hit again by the same perpetrator is more than 50% higher than being hit the first time. So it's absolutely crucial to do that postmortem to really understand how that happened and um, raise the bar for your security.
Absolutely. I think it's 6 months that so after that ransomware, and you've paid, after you had that ransomware, you paid the ransom, then they got what they wanted, but they'll dump that data that they gave back to you. They're not going to throw it away and delete it. They'll dump that data
Sure.
on the dark web. And so
Sure.
typically, that gives the next party the opportunity to go back with more intelligence.
Absolutely.
So misconceptions about voice-based phishing, vishing. We want to kind of help you all to understand that this isn't just something that is for a certain demographic or a type or a certain type of attack, and how it traditionally works. I really want us to open our minds and really think about just the misconception, so we can understand and operate better in the future. But what we're showing you here is that voice-based phishing, it's not just something that happens to those who are 55 or older. It can happen to the younger generation, and statistically it looks like it's happening more to that younger generation. And one key thing that I'll say, and if you check out our YouTube channel, I kind of talk about how elaborate these phishing scams, these hybrid phishing scams are, where they have a call center. You're calling in thinking that you're calling this brand. It's an automated system. You're pressing one to get to your account manager. You have the music. It's so convincing where anyone can fall for it. But Boaz, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on misconception. It doesn't have to be age wise, but what are some of the misconceptions about phishing or hybrid phishing attacks?
Sure. I think kind of the basic misconception is people just don't believe how common they are.
Mhm.
Um, People, really think it's all on, done in the digital channels, and I think this is where it catches people off guard. Nobody, or most people, I think out there haven't heard about, a phishing attack that is done through a phone call, right? It seems counterintuitive. How do you do kind of a networking digital attack through phone? But it happens. So I think that's the first misconception. Any kind of media type of connectivity can be used. I'm sure perpetrators would have found a way to carry attacks with smoke signals, right? If that was still being used. So
I think they did. That was
you
one of
know,
the first phishing attacks.
could be right. So whatever's available, they'll use it, and I think creating a lot of these, and I actually, with the age thing, I actually think younger people, get more excited about campaigns and promotions and things that really talk to kind of the younger generation getting different perks, and I think it's easier to get them to call and hand over information, thinking that something's going to come out of this. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I'm trying to see, Trevor, you said you're continuously shocked by how bad smishing attacks are. They're bad, but the key thing is that it's disarming. So you're getting this text message that comes in. We often are reactive where we get our text message, we respond quickly, and so they don't have to put a lot of effort into it. It's just that right now we've been trained so much to be cautious and have that pause with emails, where we're slowly educating and getting people up to speed to realize that they need to have that same pause over smishing attacks, vishing attacks, or just in any, like what Boaz said, anywhere where we're communicating with people. We need to be a little bit more, you know, we need to have a pause. And I like to use this concept of having a zero trust thought process, which Boaz is going to talk a little bit more
sure,
about. What does that mean? And so,
absolutely,
how do we prepare? This is the key thing that I want everyone to take away. This is why Boaz and I are here. Is we're here to educate, but we're also here to give you some takeaways that you can take into your organization today and start trying to figure out how to get your people to protect themselves from these types of attacks. And so for us, it is really key. And what Boaz is talking about, what we're both talking about, is if you do these things, you're going to potentially protect yourself, your loved ones, and your organization from having that attack, having it get into your network, and spread, like Boaz talked about earlier. So the advice that I give you all on how do you protect your team is you need to show them what hybrid phishing looks like. So in this, we were intentional in this live to show you what does it look like when you get an email from PayPal. Don't 100% trust it. What are some things in that email? Dissect these messages and really try to show your people what to look out for, how they are using these callback lures to get to make your end users come to them, teaching them why is this important. And it's because we have the state of the art. We're doing the part with Perimeter One of trying to make sure that we are setting up the guardrails, but it is important for our people to do their part. We can't do one without the other 100%. So it's a team effort. And so continuously training your end users on what those messages look like, and how it can start from an email, a phishing attack, a DM in your LinkedIn profile, as well as a simple phone call. Really try to explain a little bit more about what does this mean, and continuously train your end users on how to do that. And in HacWare, we have a phishing simulation platform that does phishing simulations. We have training to help your users to understand what hybrid phishing looks like. And it's a continuous endeavor on what's happening today and not what happened last quarter, last year. We're trying to prepare our users on how to protect themselves and their company. Boaz, tell us a little bit
Sure.
about how they can, protect their end users with zero trust, or help us to understand what does that mean for us.
Sure. So first of all, education. Preventing that initial part of the attack. Preventing that initial action by the user to start that sequence, that kill chain of the attack is critical. But humans will always at some point reach the point where they do fall for an attack. It's part of human nature, and people, even if you're trained, just not paying full attention at a certain point of time, that happens. So this is really where we want to help solve with technology, right? We don't just want to have rely on people's behavior. We want to take that a step further and put in place technology. And zero trust really is a new way of thinking. Zero trust focuses really on enterprise security. It's more about how users connect and interact with the resources within the organization. And zero trust is really a concept that says we need to define or enable least privileges to users in an organization. And this is as opposed to older technologies. We've all heard about VPN, right? A VPN really enables users to connect remotely to company resources, but essentially they connect you to a data center and you have access to that, all of the applications, all of the resources in that data center. And really, zero trust says, no, if you're working for HR, let's limit your access only to those resources, to those applications that it's really critical for you to access. And zero trust, additionally has capabilities to block phishing attacks. So one of the things, for example, we do, we have a secure web gateway, which is able to identify links. This mostly works on click. When you click on a link that leads to a malicious site, we're able to identify that and block that attack and prevent that from happening. We also have the capability that if you do, click on a link that will lead you to a website from which they will try to download malicious content, right? And this is really what you need to then perpetrate a ransomware or other types of malware attacks. We scan those files and we block those before they reach the endpoint. So that's about prevention. And then the second part is trying to stop that propagation of malicious content when that reaches that endpoint. And this is really where the least privileges comes in, right? If we compromise the credentials, we're able to penetrate an endpoint for somebody working in HR. At least we will be able to block, even if their endpoint has been compromised, we will limit the damage that can be done. For example, they will not be able to reach an organization's, source code or financial information with an HR user. So it's about really minimizing the access and the lateral move capabilities of an employee. And that goes a long way into minimizing the impact and the degree of devastation of an attack after it has occurred. And this is how, kind of after the fact, we try to minimize that damage.
I 100% agree. I love it, and that is how we really try to build this strong cybersecurity culture where we have least privilege, and people know, and they learn the why. Why don't I have access to everything? That's
Sure.
where your awareness training comes in. And then this makes it easy for
Absolutely.
the managed service provider or the IT professional when they are implementing least privilege and they communicate the why. Now we're building this community of people who understand I don't need access to everything. We're building a security first
Sure.
environment. And we're trying to prevent, if I make a mistake, which is super helpful. Like, we're all human. If I make a mistake, I know that the company isn't going to go down. We have
True.
safeguards in place to make sure that we can still operate
Sure.
and prevent the damage from propagating. I think that's 100%
Sure.
a great point, Boaz.
True.
And I love
It's
Go ahead.
Yep. Just what I like to say that it's really super critical. And what we are seeing is that companies, especially SMBs, right? Out of those that are being hit with ransomware, more between 75 and 80% actually have to close shop within a week. So it literally brings a company down. Can bring, with hypermobility, it can bring the company down. And it's so critical. I agree with everything you said. It's the education behind it. It's how to avoid these attacks, understanding why there are these limitations of access in your organization. And I super agree. It has to be communicated, especially if you're moving from a VPN where people who connected had access to everything,
Yep.
and now they don't. I think it's really important to have the conversation and talk to the people before you enforce it, so they don't come log in one day and then it's locked. Communicating that and always having that conversation, that education about how to prevent, education about why these solutions are in place. They're limiting their movement, but it's eventually done to protect them personally also, and the organization. And obviously nobody wants to be the cause of the organization having to close shop because of breach they were responsible for.
Absolutely right. And you made it personal when you made it a business conversation and you talked about business going out of business. 75 to 80% of businesses going out of business due to an attack. That's what I think we also need to make sure when we're educating the end users, but also if we have, our managed service providers in the audience and you're talking to your business contacts, talking to them about from a business impact standpoint, the outcome of not doing these things. What does it mean for you? And I like what Jack West said. So Jack, you talked about you had a pastor who had a SIM swap. Oh, they went through a SIM swap phishing attack. And so the phone company, they were impersonating the phone company, or they went to the phone company, they got the SIM card to be swapped, and the cyber criminal was able to gain access to banking information. And so the bank, thankfully, it looks like the bank was able to stop 3,000 in transfers that were getting initiated through this SIM swapping type of endeavor. But that is a key part of when I talked about call centers and how we have these individuals working at phone companies who are getting these calls coming in from cyber criminals impersonating a end user and trying to get them to change the SIM information to their phone. And so now they can get access to banking information, starting transfers. And yeah, that's just terrible. Any questions?
Absolutely.
Cass, I see you said you've encountered all of these types of attacks. Yeah. But what we're here for is we're trying to make sure that now we all know. Now we got to take this back to our teams, and we got to just continuously talk, train, and put some of these actions into practice. All right, we got a question for Boaz. It says, can you share more about some of the most important components of zero trust that organizations should be looking at?
Sure thing. So, in terms of managing the network, zero trust network access (ZTNA) is probably the kind of most fundamental and important tool in that zero trust approach to protecting that network. It makes sure that employees, whether they're connected from the office or remotely, get that same level of security and are able to access resources. Of course, implementing least privilege access that we talked about, and making sure that zero trust elements are implemented throughout. Secure Web Gateway is also a big part of the solution. That part where you're able to block clicks on links that go to malicious sites and are able to scan downloaded files to make sure nothing malicious is downloaded. And it's also being able to protect your cloud resources, right? You talked about how kind of the world has changed, and a lot of organizations are using public cloud, AWS and Azure, to deploy their applications. Being able also to protect access to those applications that are hosted somewhere else, not in your own data center, is also a big part of the solution, and what companies are looking for to get that end-to-end protection. for users and resources.
Great question. All right, it looks like we got one more question. Real quick, we have Kate who asked, what is the best recommendation for MSPs to educate their end users on what to look out for? What strategies have you seen work? What has worked is it's really important to, this is the first, I always tell managed service providers, cybersecurity awareness is that first, it's that thing that your users can feel and see. Like they don't see all of the other great things that you're doing behind the scenes, protecting the perimeter, endpoint security. They don't see all of that. They don't even know that that's going on. But what they do see is security awareness training. They see phishing simulations. And it's really important to kick that off on the where everyone is aware, everyone understands why. So I always recommend for MSPs, if you can, do a kickoff meeting or send if you can do a kickoff meeting, send an email to first explain to everyone who's starting security awareness or phishing simulations what to expect and the why. And then we want to make sure that we're creating a culture where if you are doing phishing simulations, and that is really important to help us understand what hybrid phishing looks like today. It's a part of experiential learning of helping us to know what to do when we're under a hybrid attack. But it's really key to get your users to understand that reporting is key, giving them the ability to report these types of attacks. And if they have made a mistake, letting them know that it's not going to be the end of the world, leading with a positive reinforcement type of scenario, I see works best, but I know some industries may not be able to do that. And then the key thing here is just continuously training them and celebrating them when they do well, but also encouraging them if they make a mistake, that this is why we're doing this exercise. So if you're under attack, this is what you should do to make sure that you don't hide it. You don't tell anyone that this attack is happening. And then we see that we have this malware or ransomware solution propagating throughout our systems for days. We're really trying to create a culture where people see something, say something, they're actively engaged, and there isn't any shame. And it's just this continuous exercise. Well, thank you all for joining our session. This was a great session on hybrid phishing attacks. Boaz from Perimeter 81, I really appreciate this. Has been a great conversation. I really appreciate having you here. Any last thoughts, Boaz?
So thanks for having me, Tiffany. First of all, it has been really interesting, and I'm really happy you invited me to join. I think overall, really, in the last answer, kind of you really summed it up. It's really that combination of the human factor, the education. Doing that education, I think, simulations and the phishing attack simulations are important. Of course, they need to be done, tread lightly kind of when you do those and not overwhelm and get people too concerned. But it should be done with a positive sentiment. It's not about scaring people. It's about creating awareness of what is out there and the importance of protecting employees. And then, of course, it's the other side of it is implementing the right technology to make sure that you intercept these attacks before they even reach the user. But if that doesn't happen and you are compromised, getting the right tools to block it after the attack and minimize the damage. It's that combination of the human factor and the technology, I think, in this case, that both need to be in place in order to be successful.
And if someone wants to reach out to Perimeter 81 and learn a little bit more, how can they reach out to you all?
Sure. So this is our website. There's there's a kind of a contact email that you can reach out and have somebody talk to one of our experts that can help you walk through the solution. We also enable companies out there that are interested to set up their own environment on their own and start playing around with it. And whenever they want to kind of talk to us and take it a step forward, we're there to do this. So all of these options are available on our website, and everyone's welcome to come visit us.
And you can find out about HacWare if you go to hacware.com/MSP. And one exciting thing that we're pointing out here is that we're both ConnectWise Marketplace members. So you can go to ConnectWise, go to the Marketplace. You can look up both of our companies and book a demo from there. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.